tension always stayed strong between them. It was like a careful dance with quick looks and rules that no one said out loud. He was a wild king who promised to keep her safe. He always stayed at a respectful distance. That gentle peace broke apart the exact moment she said she liked another man. This brought out a strong jealousy that changed their whole story. Winter in the northern lands of Northumbria was very hard. It covered the old stone fortress of Dunstanburgh with thick ice and snow. It was the year 1274. At that time, the agreements between the human kingdoms and the wolf groups were as easy to break as thin glass. Inside the big halls of the castle, a quiet but strong battle was happening. It was not fought with swords or arrows. It was fought with long silences and hidden wishes. Cullen Patterson was the alpha king of the Pennine Pack. He was a ruler that people feared because he was very good at fighting and always stayed in complete control. He was a tall man with strong lines on his face and cold authority. His wide shoulders carried the heavy weight of a broken kingdom, but even with all his great strength, the hardest thing he did was control himself around one special woman, Lady Riley Beaufort. Riley had been sent to his court as a ward from the southern human kingdoms. She was like a political prisoner, but dressed in nice velvet clothes and polite words. When she first came, she expected to meet a scary monster. She thought she would live in fear, locked in a wet tower, and have to follow the wishes of a wild beast. Instead, she received the best rooms in the eastern part of the castle. She had her own helpers and maids. She could walk freely around the castle grounds, but she did not receive any warmth from the king who was hosting her. Cullen had made a strong, unseen line between them from the very first day she arrived in his big hall. He never let himself be alone with her. There were always at least 2 guards with them. He always called her by her full formal title, Lady Riley. When he passed her in the narrow hallways lit by torches, he would press his back against the cold stone wall. He gave her lots of space, as if just touching the edge of her soft silk dress against his leather clothes would make the whole castle fall down. To Riley, his distance felt like he did not like her. She was a smart woman with quiet beauty. She had long auburn hair that fell in waves, and bright hazel eyes that noticed everything. She spent her days in the big library, reading and translating old Latin books. Sometimes she stood on the high castle walls, looking out at the frozen sea. She often saw Cullen watching her from far away, from the courtyard below, or from high balconies above. Whenever their eyes met, his face became hard like stone, and he quickly turned away. She thought he hated her. She believed she was a living reminder of the weak peace he had to keep. She was completely wrong. Under his cold outside, Cullen was fighting a big battle inside himself. The moment Riley stepped out of her carriage many months before, the old wild wolf inside him had woken up strongly. It said she was his mate. Her smell, a mix of wild roses, old papers, and sweet rain, was always bothering his strong senses, but Cullen understood the real world they lived in. If he claimed a human noblewoman who was a political guest, it would start a big war that would destroy both their lands. Even worse, he worried his wild and strong nature would scare her and break the gentle spirit he secretly loved. So he held back his strong growls. He locked the wolf deep inside his mind. He used duty and honor to keep it chained. He would protect her. He would give her what she needed, but he would never cross the line. He would live with the pain of being close to her but never touching her, for as long as she stayed in his home. The castle workers whispered about the strong feeling in the air whenever the king and the lady were in the same room. During big feasts, Cullen would sit at the head of the long oak table. His knuckles would turn white as he held his drinking cup tightly. He would stare at a far tapestry on the wall, so he would not look at how the candlelight moved on her skin. Riley felt the same strong pull, but she was confused by his mixed actions. She found herself staying near him longer than she needed to, hoping to find a small crack in his strong wall. One evening she spoke to him. Her voice broke the heavy quiet in the drawing room. The only other sound was the fire cracking in the hearth. "My lord," she said, "if my time in the library bothers your council meetings, I can study in my own rooms instead." Cullen stopped writing. His pen stayed in the air over the scroll. He did not look up. "The library is open for you to use, Lady Riley. You disturb no one." His voice was very cold. It hurt her feelings. Riley picked up her long skirts, gave a stiff bow and left the room quickly. She did not know that as soon as she was gone, Cullen dropped his pen. He buried his face in his hands and took a deep, rough breath. He was filled with her sweet smell that she left behind. The unseen line between them stayed strong. It was like a fortress made of saying no. It stood tall against their shared wish to be closer. But as winter slowly ended, and spring started to bring life back to the frozen lands, that fortress faced a new danger it could not expect. The arrival of the southern group in early May brought color, noise, and unwanted problems to the dark fortress of Dunstanburgh. The human king had sent messengers to talk about trade paths. It was a friendly act to make the old agreement stronger. Among these messengers was Lord Trace Castillo, the younger son of the Duke of York. Trace was everything Cullen was not. Where the Alpha King was dark, quiet, and very strong-looking, Trace was golden-haired, loud, and full of easy charm. He was a well-known knight, famous for winning in jousting games, and speaking well in royal courts. From the moment he rode through the castle gate, his bright blue eyes found Riley. He did not hide how much he liked her right away. For Riley, who had been without warm words or simple talks for almost a year, Trace's attention felt nice. He treated her like a lively woman, not like a weak political prisoner. He told her fun stories about the southern courts. He made her laugh during the boring dinner meetings. He offered his arm to walk with her through the castle gardens. From his seat at the high table, Cullen watched everything. To people who did not know him well, the Alpha King looked like a calm statue of power. But his closest guards saw the small but scary changes. The air would suddenly feel colder when Trace went near Riley. The heavy silver cup in Cullen's hand would bend under his tight grip. A low, deep sound in his chest sounded like a wild animal getting ready to attack. Cullen's inner wolf, which he had held back for so long, was starting to break its strong chains. "He is touching her," the wolf growled inside him when Trace put a hand on Riley's shoulder during a walk in the courtyard. "It is only diplomacy," Cullen's thinking mind tried to say, even though his jaw was clenched tight and his teeth hurt. The final breaking moment came on the last night of the visitors' stay. A big banquet was held in the great hall. The room was lit by 1,000 candles. The tables were full of roasted meats and good wine. The air was thick with the smell of pine wood burning and the strong smell of Trace's fancy perfume that covered Riley's sweet rose smell. After the main food was cleared away, the strict rules of the evening became more relaxed. Musicians played happy music in the corner, and people walked around and talked freely. Riley stood near the big stone fireplace with her lady helper Beatrice. Her cheeks were pink from the wine and the warm fire. Trace had stepped away to talk to his captain, leaving the two women alone. Cullen stood in the shadows near a big archway. He pretended to listen to his general talk about guards on the borders, but his strong senses were completely focused on the talk near the fireplace. "Lord Trace is very kind and pays attention to you, my lady," Beatrice whispered with a teasing smile. "I saw how he looked at you during the feast. He plans to ask your father for your hand in marriage when he goes back south. What do you think of him?" Riley let out a soft, happy laugh. She fanned her warm face with her hand. She looked in the direction Trace had gone. Her mind was full of the evening's fun and the old frustration from Cullen always being so cold. She wanted to feel alive. She wanted to feel wanted. "He is charming," Riley said. Her voice carried lightly over the sound of the fire. "And, well, one cannot say he is not very attractive. Truly, he is very handsome. Standing near him feels like standing next to a bright summer sun. It is hard to ignore." The word hot stayed in the air. A loud crashing sound filled the great hall. The heavy oak table near the archway broke into pieces as Cullen's fist went right through the strong wood. The music stopped suddenly. All talking ended. The normal chatter was replaced by a scary, heavy feeling of the Alpha's full power filling the room. Riley jumped. Her heart beat fast in her throat as she turned around quickly. Cullen stood up from the broken table. His calm face was completely broken. His eyes, which were usually a cool, stormy gray, now glowed with a bright, unnatural amber light. The veins in his neck stood out. A low, loud growl came from his chest. It shook the stones under their feet. "Out," Cullen commanded. His voice was a quiet rumble, but it carried the full scary weight of his power as king. The guests froze. unable to move because of the strong dominance coming from him. The sound echoed like thunder off the high ceilings. People panicked. Important visitors, knights and servants rushed to leave the great hall. Trace ran back in when he heard the noise. He took one look at the tall king with glowing eyes and stopped. Cullen slowly turned his head. He locked his hunter's stare onto the golden knight. The clear hate in Cullen's face was so strong that Trace stepped back. He reached for a sword he was not even wearing. "Leave us, Castillo," Cullen growled. He took a slow, heavy step forward. "Before I tear that pretty head from your shoulders." Guards quickly stepped in. They pulled the scared and confused Trace out of the hall and slammed the heavy oak doors shut. They locked them from the outside. Suddenly the big hall was empty except for the roaring fire, some spilled cups, and the two of them. Riley stood frozen near the fireplace. Her breathing was fast and shallow. She had never seen him like this. The man who always kept 10 steps away was now walking toward her with the smooth steps of a hunting wolf. The invisible line he had worked so hard to keep for a whole year was being destroyed with every step. "My lord," she started. Her voice shook. "Hot," Cullen repeated the word. It came out like a bad curse. He stopped just 1 foot away from her. Riley had to tilt her head all the way back to look into his glowing amber eyes. She could feel strong heat coming from his body. He was shaking. He was fighting a big battle inside between his remaining control and his strong need to claim her. "You find him hot," Cullen whispered. He leaned down. For the first time in a year she felt his breath touch her cheek. His smell, pine, rain, and raw power, was very strong. "Aye, he is a handsome man, Cullen," she said, using his first name for the first time. She was pressed against the warm stones of the fireplace. Cullen's hands hit the stone wall on both sides of her head. He trapped her there. His big body blocked everything else, putting her in his shadow. The control was gone. The cold face was gone. "I have spent every single moment of the last 12 months fighting my own mind to keep my hands away from you," Cullen said through tight teeth. His voice was rough and full of need. "I stayed away to keep you safe, and you stand in my hall, in front of my people, and look at another man with desire." Riley's eyes grew wide. Her heart beat hard. She finally understood his words. He did not hate her. He was scared of himself. Before she could answer, Cullen closed the last small space between them. He buried his face in the curve of her neck. He breathed in her smell deeply. A desperate sound came from his throat. The king who had never crossed the line had now completely broken it. There was no going back. Flames danced in the big stone fireplace. They made moving shadows on the walls of the great hall, but they were nothing compared to the strong heat coming from Cullen Patterson. For 1 whole year, Riley Beaufort had only known the cold side of the Alpha King, his stiff way of standing, his short words, and his hard-to-read eyes. Now, trapped between his strong arms, she was surrounded by his fire. Cullen's chest moved up and down against hers. The deep sound from his earlier growls still hummed under his leather clothes. He kept his face in her neck. His breathing was rough. Breathing her smell of wild roses and sweet rain seemed to be the only thing keeping him from losing himself completely. Riley's hands shook at first. They hovered in the air between them. Then they gently rested on his wide shoulders. The moment her fingers touched the thick dark fur on his cloak, a strong shiver went through his big body. "You thought I hated you," Cullen said softly against her skin. The words were a painful truth. He slowly lifted his head so she could see the deep pain and softness in his glowing amber eyes. "Every time you looked at me with your quiet strength, every time you offered to leave the room because you thought my silence meant I did not like you, it hurt me deeply." "You gave me no other idea," Riley replied. Her voice was soft, but steady. The first shock was turning into a deep understanding. "You would not look at me. You treated me like I was made of thin glass, or worse, like a sickness you wanted to stay away from." Cullen moved his hands from the wall. His big, rough fingers gently held her face. His thumbs moved softly over her pink cheeks, with such care that it took her breath away. "You are a human noblewoman, Riley," he said. "You are the daughter of Duke William Beaufort. You were sent here to help keep a treaty, a piece of paper, that stops a war which would cover these snowy lands in blood. The heavy weight of being king showed in every word he spoke. And I am a beast. From the moment you stepped out of your carriage in the courtyard, my wolf knew you. You are my mate, the other half of my soul. But to claim a human guest, to bring you into the wild and strong side of my nature, he closed his eyes tightly. A muscle moved in his tight jaw. I chose to go without you so you could live peacefully. I built a strong wall in my mind to keep you out. And what changed? She whispered. Her heart beat fast. She leaned into his touch, completely caught by the true care in his eyes. You called Trace Castillo hot. Cullen said it plainly. His amber eyes flashed with strong possessiveness. You looked at another man with wanting, and my wall fell apart. The idea of him taking you south, touching you, holding you, it broke every chain I had made in the past year. It was almost funny that one simple word said in a cold old hall had broken the strong will of the most feared alpha king in the north. Trace is a charming but silly man, Cullen, Riley said. She looked straight into his eyes. He speaks with practiced pretty words and empty compliments. He is like a summer sun, bright, loud, and quick to pass, but I have spent the last 12 months falling in love with the winter. Cullen's breath caught. Riley, I stood on those freezing high walls every morning just to watch you train your soldiers, she told him. Her hands moved up into his thick dark hair. I stayed in the library for many hours, hoping you would come look for a book, so I could hear your voice. I never wanted the sun, Cullen. I only ever wanted you. The last bits of Cullen's control completely broke. With a deep sound of need, he kissed her. The kiss was not soft. It was a full year of hidden pain, quiet wishing, and hungry feelings finally set free. It was strong and complete. It tasted of rich wine and true passion. Riley melted against him. Her fingers tangled in his hair. She matched his strong feelings. He kissed her like she was the air he needed to live. His big hands moved down to hold her waist. He lifted her easily, until her feet left the stone floor. When they finally stopped kissing, both breathing hard, Cullen rested his forehead against hers. The amber glow in his eyes had become a deep, stormy gray again. You are mine, he whispered. It was a true promise between them. I am, she agreed. She gently touched the strong line of his jaw. But their quiet special moment was suddenly broken by loud banging fists on the locked oak doors of the great hall. My Lord Cullen, open these doors in the name of the Southern Crown. The real world, with all its political tricks and weak agreements, came rushing back. Cullen gently put Riley back on their feet. He stepped in front of her to protect her from the doors. The Alpha King's strong king face returned. But this time, he reached back and held Riley's hand tightly with his fingers. Let them in, Cullen said softly, but his voice carried clearly through the big hall with full power. The heavy oak doors opened with a groan. Cold air from the castle hallways came in. It brought a very upset Lord Trace Castillo. He was with his own guards and some of Cullen's guards. Trace's golden charm was gone. His face was red with anger. You have attacked an emissary of the Southern Kingdom, King Cullen, Trace said angrily. He would not step fully into the room. He was still scared of the big Lycan king. Your sudden anger breaks the rules of guest safety and the peace agreement. Cullen did not move. He stood tall like a powerful statue, with Riley safe behind his left shoulder. You are still alive, Castillo. Consider that my greatest respect for guest rules. Now why are you shouting at my doors? Trace's eyes moved to Riley. His face tightened when he saw their joined hands. A mean look came on his face. I did not come to trade mean words with a beast. I came to take my betrothed. The silence in the hall became so complete it felt loud. Riley became stiff. Her blood felt cold. You are what? Cullen's voice became dangerously low. Trace opened the rolled paper with a quick move. He stood taller. I did not come to Northumbria just to talk about trade. I carry an order from Duke William Beaufort and my father, Lord Reginald Castillo. The Southern King has approved a marriage between the houses of York and Beaufort. Lady Riley must return south with me at first light to become my wife. It rolled to stop at Cullen's boots. To keep the northern borders peaceful forever, the ward Lady Riley Beaufort shall be freed from her political stay and married to Lord Trace Castillo. This marriage is stronger than all old agreements. Riley's mind raced. This was never just about trade. Her father and Lord Castile were planning to join their lands and armies. By marrying her to Trace, the Southern King was making a strong army right on the Wolf border. Trace's flirting and attention had not been real. It was a planned move to take her away from Dunstanburgh. "My father did not write to me about this," Riley said. She stepped forward. Her voice was clear and strong like a noble lady. "Your agreement is not needed, my lady," Trace said in a dismissing way. "Your father commands it, and King Cullen is bound by the old treaty to let you go if a royal order comes. If he refuses, he officially starts a war on the southern kingdoms." Trace crossed his arms. A proud smile appeared on his lips. He thought he had won against the Alpha King. Cullen could either give up the woman he wanted, or start a terrible war for his whole kingdom. Cullen looked down at the scroll. He let go of Riley's hand and stepped forward. The movement was slow and scary. He bent down and picked up the paper. He read the words with his stormy gray eyes. Then, in one smooth move, Cullen threw the order straight into the roaring fire. "No!" Trace shouted. He stepped forward as the dry paper caught fire and turned to black ash. "You rude dog, you have just declared war." "I have declared nothing," Cullen said. He brushed his hands on his leather pants. His voice was chillingly calm. "The old treaty says I must release a political ward to a royal order. It says nothing about releasing my queen." The guards in the room gasped. All color left his face. "Queen?" Trace stammered. "You cannot. She is a human. She is Beaufort's daughter." "She is my mate," Cullen corrected him. His voice echoed off the stone walls with the clear weight of truth. He turned back to Riley and held out his hand. The question in his eyes was clear. He was giving her a choice. Taking his hand would mean cutting ties with the South forever. It would mean becoming the queen of a Lycan kingdom and standing with him against any armies her father might send. Riley did not wait. She walked past the ashes of her father's order. She put her hand firmly in Cullen's and stepped up beside him, facing Trace and the Southern Guards. "You will ride south at first light, Lord Trace," Riley commanded. Her voice was steady and full of new power. "You will tell my father that his ward is dead, but the Queen of the Northumbria Pax lives. Tell him that if he brings his armies to our borders, we will meet him with the full strength of the winter he fears so much." Trace stared at her, completely surprised. The quiet, easy political prisoner he thought he could control was gone. In her place was a strong woman full of power, her hand held tightly by the Alpha King. "You are making a big mistake, Riley," Trace warned. His voice shook with fear and hurt pride. "You are choosing a monster over your own people." Cullen took one step forward. His eyes flashed amber one last time. "Get out of my castle, Castile, before I show you exactly what kind of monster I can be." Trace swallowed hard. He stepped backward until he reached the hallway. He turned and ran. His guards hurried after him into the freezing night. The heavy oak doors were closed by Cullen's guards. This left the king and his new queen alone again in the warm great hall. The silence that came this time was not full of hidden tension or painful distance. It was full of deep, unbreakable peace. Cullen looked down at Riley. A rare, beautiful smile appeared on his usually serious face. He lifted her hand and pressed a gentle kiss to her fingers. "Queen of the Northumbria Pax," he said softly. The words sounded nice coming from him. "You realize what you have just done," he continued. "You have tied yourself to a beast and probably started a war." "I am not afraid of a war, Cullen," Riley replied. She reached up to touch the smile on his lips. "And you are no beast. You are the man who spent a year fighting his own strong feelings just to keep me safe. I cannot think of a braver king to stand beside." Cullen wrapped his arms around her. He pulled her close against his chest. The invisible line that had caused them pain for 12 long months was completely gone. It was replaced by a strong bond made in fire and brave choices. He buried his face in her hair, breathing in the smell of wild roses. He knew that no matter what storms the southern armies might bring, his home was finally complete. This story teaches us many important lessons about love, self-control, and bravery. True love often means waiting and making hard choices to protect someone, like Cullen did for a whole year. Jealousy can be powerful, but it is better when it leads to honest talks instead of harm. We also learn that people are not always what they seem at first. Cullen seemed cold, but was full of care. Riley showed us that speaking up for ourselves and choosing our own path is strong, even when others try to decide for us. In real life, good relationships are built on trust, respect, and communication. Facing fears and standing together against problems makes bonds stronger. Always remember, being kind, patient, and true to yourself can create beautiful endings, even in difficult times. These lessons help us build better friendships and handle our own feelings wisely every day. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and leave a comment below with your thoughts. Your support helps this channel grow and allows us to bring you more amazing stories. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.